The sky was calm, painted in shades of orange and pink as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a peaceful evening at the summer camp, nestled deep in the woods. Children laughed and played, their voices echoing through the trees. Parents sat around a crackling bonfire, sharing stories and roasting marshmallows. For a moment, everything felt perfect. But perfection never lasts. A low hum broke the silence, growing louder with each passing second. The ground began to tremble, and the trees swayed as if caught in a storm. The children froze, their laughter replaced by uneasy whispers. The parents stood up, their eyes scanning the sky. Then, it appeared. A massive ship, sleek and silver, descended from the clouds. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the fading sunlight. The hum turned into a deafening roar as the ship hovered above the clearing, casting a shadow over the camp. The air grew heavy, and a strange, metallic smell filled the air. The children huddled together, their faces pale with fear. One of the parents, a man with graying hair, stepped forward. "Stay back," he shouted, though his voice trembled. "We don't want any trouble." The ship responded with a blinding flash of light. When the light faded, the man was gone. In his place stood a group of tall, slender figures. Their skin was a pale gray, and their eyes glowed a cold, unnatural blue. They moved with an eerie grace, their long fingers twitching as if they were pulling invisible strings. One of the aliens stepped forward, its voice echoing in the minds of everyone present. "You are weak," it said, its tone dripping with disdain. "Your kind is primitive, unworthy of this planet. But your children, they have potential." The parents tried to shield their children, but it was no use. The aliens moved too quickly, their technology too advanced. One by one, the children were lifted into the air, their small bodies glowing with the same blue light as the aliens' eyes. The parents screamed, reaching out, but they were powerless. A boy, no older than 10, struggled against the invisible force holding him. "Let me go," he shouted, his voice breaking. But the aliens only laughed, a sound that sent chills down everyone's spines. "You will serve us," the lead alien said, its voice cold and final. "You will learn your place." As the children were pulled toward the ship, one of them, a girl with fiery red hair, turned to look at the adults. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her voice was steady. "Don't worry," she said. "They'll regret this." The aliens paused, their glowing eyes narrowing. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the lead alien smirked. "Brave words for such a fragile creature," it said. "But bravery will not save you." The children were taken aboard the ship, their cries fading as the doors closed behind them. The parents collapsed to the ground, their hearts shattered. The ship rose into the sky, disappearing into the clouds as quickly as it had come. But the girl's words lingered in the air, a spark of hope in the darkness. The aliens had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. And they would soon learn just how dangerous that mistake could be. The news spread like wildfire. Within hours, the entire world knew about the abduction. Videos of the massive alien ship and the terrified faces of the parents flooded the internet. News channels played the footage on repeat, their anchors struggling to make sense of what had happened. Social media exploded with outrage, fear, and disbelief. For the first time in history, humanity faced a common enemy, one that had struck at its most vulnerable. Governments scrambled to respond. Emergency meetings were held, but no one had answers. The aliens were unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. Their technology was far beyond human understanding, and their motives were unclear. Some leaders called for caution, urging people to remain calm. Others demanded immediate action, no matter the cost. But while the world's leaders debated, ordinary people took matters into their own hands. Protests erupted in cities across the globe, with millions demanding that something be done to rescue the children. Parents held up pictures of their missing sons and daughters, their faces etched with pain and determination. The message was clear: humanity would not stand by while its children were taken. In a small town far from the chaos, a man sat alone in his dimly lit living room. His name was John, though few people called him that anymore. He was a retired soldier, a man who had seen too much and lost even more. His face was lined with age, and his eyes carried the weight of countless battles. He had tried to leave that life behind, but the news of the abduction had stirred something deep within him. John stared at the television, his fists clenched. The images of the children being taken played over and over, each one cutting deeper than the last. He thought of his own daughter, long gone but never forgotten. He thought of the parents who were now living his worst nightmare. And he knew he couldn't sit idly by. The next morning, John drove to the nearest military base. The guards tried to stop him, but one look at his face told them he wasn't there to cause trouble. He demanded to speak with whoever was in charge. After a tense wait, he was led to a small office where a young officer sat behind a desk. "I want to help," John said, his voice steady. "I want to bring those children home." The officer sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We all do," he said. "But we don't even know where to start. These aliens, they're not like anything we've ever seen. We don't have the technology to fight them." John leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Then we find people who do. We don't need an army. We need a team. People who can think outside the box, who aren't afraid to take risks. We need to show these aliens that they messed with the wrong species." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "All right," he said. "I'll see what I can do." Over the next few days, John worked tirelessly to assemble a team. He reached out to old contacts, calling in favors and pulling strings. He found a scientist named Dr. Emily Carter, a brilliant mind who had spent her life studying extraterrestrial phenomena. She was skeptical at first, but the thought of children being used as experiments was enough to convince her. Next, he recruited a pilot named Mike "Ace" Thompson, a former Air Force ace who had been grounded after a controversial mission. Ace was reckless and unpredictable, but he was also one of the best pilots John had ever known. When John explained the mission, Ace simply grinned and said, "Count me in." Finally, there was Sarah "Bite" Nguyen, a hacker who had made a name for herself by exposing government secrets. She was young and brash, but her skills were unmatched. When John approached her, she didn't hesitate. "Those aliens think they're untouchable," she said. "Let's show them how wrong they are." With the team assembled, John laid out the plan. Using a stolen alien ship that had been recovered years ago, they would travel to the aliens' home planet. It was a risky mission, with little chance of success. But as John looked at the faces of his team, he knew they were all in. "This isn't just about rescuing those kids," he said. "This is about showing the universe that humanity isn't weak. That we'll fight for what's ours. No matter the cost." The team nodded, their determination unwavering. They knew the odds were against them. They knew they might not come back. But they also knew they had to try. As they prepared for the journey, John thought of the girl with the fiery red hair, the one who had told the aliens they would regret their actions. He didn't know her name, but he admired her courage. And he vowed to do everything in his power to bring her and the others home. The aliens had made a grave mistake. They had underestimated humanity. And soon, they would learn just how dangerous that mistake could be. The stolen alien ship was unlike anything the team had ever seen. Its interior was sleek and cold, with walls that seemed to pulse faintly with a blue light. The controls were strange, a mix of glowing panels and floating holograms that responded to touch. It was clear that the technology was far beyond human understanding, but Bite was determined to figure it out. "It's like trying to read a book in a language I don't know," she muttered, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. "But I think I've got it. Mostly." John stood behind her, his arms crossed. Mostly, he asked, raising an eyebrow. Bite shrugged. Enough to get us moving. Hopefully. Ace chuckled, leaning against the wall. That's reassuring, he said. Nothing like a little uncertainty to keep things interesting. Dr. Carter, meanwhile, was busy analyzing the ship's systems. She had brought along a portable lab, filled with tools and devices she had cobbled together. The energy source is incredible, she said, her voice filled with awe. It's like nothing we've ever seen. If we can harness this, it could change everything. John nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop thinking about the children, about the fear in their eyes as they were taken. He knew they didn't have much time. Every second they delayed was another second the children spent in danger. Let's get moving, he said, his voice firm. We've got a mission to complete. The ship lifted off smoothly, its engines humming softly. The team watched through the viewscreen as the Earth grew smaller and smaller, until it was just a blue dot in the vastness of space. For a moment, there was silence as the reality of what they were doing sank in. Then, the challenges began. The first obstacle was an asteroid field. The ship's sensors picked it up long before they reached it, but there was no way around it. The asteroids were massive, some as big as mountains, and they moved unpredictably. Ace took the controls, his hands steady as he navigated through the field. Hold on tight, he said, his voice calm. This is going to get bumpy. The ship weaved and dodged, narrowly avoiding collisions. The team held their breath as the asteroids loomed closer, their surfaces jagged and menacing. At one point, a particularly large asteroid grazed the side of the ship, sending a shudder through the hull. That was close, Bite said, her voice shaky. Too close. But Ace just grinned. Piece of cake, he said. Next challenge? The next challenge came in the form of alien patrols. As they approached the aliens' home planet, the ship's sensors picked up several smaller vessels, each one bristling with weapons. The team knew they couldn't afford to be detected. We need to stay hidden, John said, his voice low. If they find us, it's over. Bite worked quickly, using her skills to mask the ship's energy signature. Dr. Carter helped by adjusting the ship's systems to minimize noise and heat. The patrols passed by without noticing them, but it was a close call. As they drew closer to the planet, the tension on the ship grew. The team knew they were entering enemy territory, and the stakes were higher than ever. They could see the planet now, a cold, gray world surrounded by a ring of debris. It was a harsh, unforgiving place, and the sight of it sent a chill through the team. This is it, John said, his voice steady. Once we land, there's no turning back. We need to be ready for anything. The team nodded, their faces grim. They knew the risks, but they also knew they had no choice. The children were counting on them. The ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, the hull shaking as it encountered turbulence. The team braced themselves as the ship touched down on a barren, rocky plain. The air outside was thin and cold, and the sky was a dull, lifeless gray. As they stepped out of the ship, the reality of their situation hit them. They were alone on an alien world, surrounded by enemies. But they were also determined. They had come this far, and they weren't going to give up now. Let's move, John said, his voice firm. We've got a job to do. The team set off, their footsteps echoing in the silence. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they knew one thing for certain: they were going to bring those children home, no matter what it took. The alien planet was a place of cold, industrial beauty. Towering structures of metal and glass rose from the ground, their surfaces reflecting the dull gray light of the sky. The air was thin and carried a faint metallic smell, making it hard to breathe without the team's portable oxygen masks. The ground was rocky and uneven, with strange, glowing plants that seemed to pulse with an eerie light. The team moved cautiously, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. John led the way, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. Behind him, Dr. Carter adjusted the settings on her portable scanner, trying to pick up any trace of the children. "Anything?" John asked, his voice low. Dr. Carter shook her head. "Not yet. But the energy readings are strange. It's like the entire planet is alive, but in a way I can't quite understand." Bite frowned, her fingers flying over the screen of her handheld device. "I'm picking up some kind of signal," she said. "It's faint, but it's there. Could be a communication hub or a control center. If we can get closer, I might be able to hack into it." Ace, meanwhile, kept his eyes on the sky. "We're not alone here," he said. "I've seen a few of those patrol ships flying overhead. We need to stay out of sight." The team pressed on, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they moved deeper into the alien city, they began to notice strange details. The buildings were covered in intricate patterns, like symbols or writing, but none of them could decipher it. The air grew colder, and the sense of unease grew stronger. Finally, they reached a massive structure at the center of the city. It was taller than the others, with a domed roof that glowed faintly. The team hesitated, sensing that this was the heart of the aliens' operations. "This is it," John said, his voice firm. "Whatever they're doing with the children, it's happening here." The team approached the structure cautiously, their weapons at the ready. The entrance was a large, circular door that seemed to be made of the same shimmering metal as the ship. Bite examined it closely, her fingers tracing the surface. "There's some kind of locking mechanism," she said. "But I think I can bypass it. Give me a minute." As Bite worked, the rest of the team kept watch. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the faint hum of the alien technology. Finally, there was a soft click, and the door slid open with a hiss. Inside, the team found themselves in a vast, dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with strange machines, their surfaces covered in glowing symbols. In the center of the room was a large, circular platform, surrounded by what looked like containment pods. Each pod was filled with a faint, blue light, and inside them were the children. The team froze, their hearts pounding. The children were alive, but they looked pale and weak. Their eyes were closed, and their bodies were hooked up to the machines by thin, glowing tubes. It was a horrifying sight, and the team felt a surge of anger and determination. "We need to get them out of here," John said, his voice tight with emotion. "Now." But before they could move, a voice echoed through the chamber. It was cold and mechanical, speaking in a language none of them understood. Then, the voice shifted, speaking in perfect English. "You should not have come here," it said. "This place is not for you." The team turned to see a group of aliens entering the chamber. Their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders, and their long fingers twitched as if preparing to strike. The lead alien stepped forward, its voice dripping with disdain. "You are brave, but foolish," it said. "Your kind is weak, yet you persist in defying us. Why?" John stepped forward, his weapon raised. "We're here for the children," he said, his voice steady. "And we're not leaving without them." The alien tilted its head, as if amused. "You think you can defeat us? You are nothing but insects, scurrying beneath our feet." Before John could respond, Dr. Carter spoke up. "What are you doing to them?" she demanded, her voice shaking with anger. "Why are you using the children?" The alien's glowing eyes turned to her. "Their emotions are unique," it said. "Pure, unfiltered. We have learned to harness their fear, their pain. It powers our technology, makes us stronger. They are valuable." The team felt a surge of rage at the alien's words. The thought of the children being used as fuel for the aliens' machines was unbearable. John tightened his grip on his weapon, his eyes blazing. You're monsters, he said. And we're going to stop you. The alien smirked, a chilling expression on its gray face. You are welcome to try. With that, the aliens raised their hands, and the chamber was filled with a blinding light. The team braced themselves, knowing that the real battle was about to begin. The blinding light faded, and the team found themselves surrounded. The aliens moved with unnatural speed, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. The air crackled with energy as the aliens raised their hands, preparing to strike. John didn't hesitate. Cover the children, he shouted, firing his weapon at the nearest alien. The shot hit its mark, and the alien staggered back, but it didn't fall. Instead, it hissed, its glowing eyes narrowing in anger. The team sprang into action. Ace took cover behind a machine, firing precise shots at the aliens. Bite ducked behind a console, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to disable the machines holding the children. Dr. Carter stayed close to John, her scanner in hand, looking for a way to free the children from the pods. We need to shut this down. Dr. Carter shouted over the noise. If we can disrupt the energy flow, we might be able to release them. Bite nodded, her eyes focused on the screen in front of her. I'm working on it, she said. But these systems are complicated. I need more time. Time was something they didn't have. The aliens were closing in, their movements swift and precise. John and Ace fought back, but the aliens seemed almost unstoppable. Every shot that hit them only slowed them down for a moment before they pressed forward again. They're too strong. Ace shouted, reloading his weapon. We need a new plan. John gritted his teeth, his mind racing. He knew they couldn't win a straight fight. They needed to outsmart the aliens, to use their own technology against them. He turned to Bite. Can you overload the system? He asked. 'Cause some kind of explosion? Bite's eyes widened. Maybe, she said. But if I do that, it could take out the whole building. We'd need to get the children out first. John nodded. Do it. We'll cover you. The team redoubled their efforts. John and Ace kept the aliens at bay, their weapons firing relentlessly. Dr. Carter worked with Bite, helping her bypass the system's safeguards. The children, still trapped in their pods, began to stir, their eyes fluttering open as the machines around them flickered and sparked. Almost there. Bite shouted, her voice tense. Just a few more seconds. But then, disaster struck. One of the aliens broke through the team's defenses, its long fingers reaching for Bite. John saw it coming and moved to intercept, but he wasn't fast enough. The alien grabbed Bite, lifting her off the ground with terrifying ease. Let her go. John shouted, firing at the alien. But the shots seemed to have no effect. The alien turned its glowing eyes on him, its voice cold and mocking. You cannot win, it said. Your efforts are futile. Bite struggled in the alien's grip, her face pale but determined. She looked at John, her eyes filled with resolve. Do it, she shouted. Overload the system. Now. John hesitated, his heart pounding. He knew what she was asking. If they overloaded the system, it would destroy the building, and everyone inside. But Bite was willing to make that sacrifice to save the children. John, do it. Bite shouted again, her voice breaking. There's no time. With a heavy heart, John nodded. He turned to Dr. Carter. Do it, he said, his voice steady. Overload the system. Dr. Carter's hands trembled as she input the final commands. The machines around them began to whine, their lights flickering wildly. The aliens hesitated, their glowing eyes darting around the room as they sensed the danger. Bite smiled, even as the alien tightened its grip on her. You messed with the wrong species, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Then, the system overloaded. The explosion was deafening, a blinding flash of light and heat that tore through the chamber. John and the others were thrown to the ground, their ears ringing. The aliens were caught in the blast, their bodies disintegrating into ash. The machines holding the children shattered, the pods bursting open as the energy flow was disrupted. When the dust settled, the chamber was in ruins. The walls were blackened and cracked, and the air was thick with smoke. John struggled to his feet, his head spinning. He looked around, his heart sinking as he realized Bite was gone. "Bite," he whispered, his voice filled with grief. But there was no time to mourn. The children were free, their small bodies lying on the ground, weak but alive. Dr. Carter and Ace were already moving, checking on the children and helping them to their feet. "We need to get out of here," Dr. Carter said, her voice urgent. "This whole place could collapse." John nodded, pushing his grief aside. He knew Bite's sacrifice had given them a chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. He moved to help the children, his heart heavy but his resolve unshaken. As they made their way out of the ruined chamber, the team felt a mix of emotions. They had succeeded in rescuing the children, but the cost had been high. Bite's bravery and sacrifice would not be forgotten. The aliens had underestimated humanity once again. And this time, they had paid the price. The team moved quickly, their footsteps echoing through the crumbling alien structure. The children, weak and disoriented, clung to the adults as they were guided toward the exit. The air was thick with smoke, and the ground shook as the building began to collapse around them. John led the way, his weapon at the ready. His heart ached for Bite, but he pushed the pain aside, focusing on the task at hand. They had to get the children to safety. That was all that mattered now. "Stay close," he shouted over the noise. "We're almost out." The team reached the entrance, only to find it blocked by debris. Ace cursed under his breath, his eyes scanning the area for another way out. "We need to find another exit," he said. "This place is coming down fast." Dr. Carter pulled out her scanner, her hands trembling as she tried to find a clear path. "There's a service tunnel to the left," she said. "It should lead us outside." The team moved quickly, following Dr. Carter's directions. The tunnel was narrow and dark, but it was their best chance. The children stumbled as they ran, their small legs struggling to keep up. John and Ace took turns carrying the younger ones, their muscles burning with the effort. As they neared the end of the tunnel, they heard a sound that made their blood run cold. The low hum of alien ships filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The team emerged into the open, only to find themselves surrounded by a fleet of alien patrol ships. "We've got company," Ace said, his voice tense. "A lot of it." The ships hovered above them, their weapons trained on the team. The aliens inside glared down at them, their glowing eyes filled with anger. It was clear they weren't going to let the humans escape. John tightened his grip on his weapon, his mind racing. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but he wasn't about to give up. "We need to get to the ship," he said. "It's our only chance." The team began to move, keeping the children close. The alien ships followed, their weapons firing bursts of energy that exploded around them. The ground shook with each blast, sending chunks of rock and debris flying through the air. One of the children, a boy with wide, frightened eyes, tugged on John's sleeve. "Are we going to die?" he asked, his voice trembling. John looked down at the boy, his heart breaking at the fear in his eyes. "No," he said firmly. "We're going to get out of here. I promise." The team pressed on, their determination unwavering. Ace took the lead, using his knowledge of the terrain to guide them through the rocky landscape. Dr. Carter stayed close to the children, her voice calm and reassuring as she encouraged them to keep moving. But the aliens weren't giving up. The ships closed in, their weapons firing relentlessly. One of the blasts hit a nearby rock formation, sending a shower of debris raining down on the team. John shielded the children with his body, his back stinging as the rock struck him. "We can't keep this up," Dr. Carter shouted. "We need to do something." John knew she was right. They needed a distraction, something to buy them time. He turned to Ace. "Can you take out one of those ships?" he asked. Ace grinned, despite the danger. "I can try," he said. "But it's going to be risky." John nodded. "Do it." Ace raised his weapon, taking careful aim at one of the ships. He fired, the shot hitting its mark and causing the ship to veer off course. It crashed into another ship, the explosion lighting up the sky. The distraction worked. The remaining ships hesitated, their focus shifting to the wreckage. The team used the opportunity to make a break for it, running as fast as they could toward their ship. But the aliens weren't done yet. One of the ships broke away from the others, its weapons locking onto the team. John saw it coming and shouted a warning. "Take cover." The team dove behind a large rock, the blast narrowly missing them. The ground shook violently, and the rock began to crack under the force of the explosion. "We're not going to make it," Dr. Carter shouted, her voice filled with desperation. John clenched his fists, his mind racing. They were so close, but the aliens weren't going to let them go. Then, he remembered something Byte had said before the explosion. The aliens' technology was powered by fear, but human emotions like hope and love could disrupt it. "The children," he shouted. "They're the key." Dr. Carter's eyes widened as she understood. She turned to the children, her voice calm but urgent. "I need you to think of something happy," she said. "Something that makes you feel strong and brave. Can you do that?" The children nodded, their small faces filled with determination. They closed their eyes, focusing on their happiest memories. The air around them seemed to shimmer, a faint glow emanating from their small bodies. The alien ship hesitated, its weapons flickering as if struggling to maintain power. The team seized the moment, making a final dash for their ship. Ace reached the controls first, firing up the engines as the others climbed aboard. The alien ship recovered quickly, its weapons powering up once more. But it was too late. The team's ship lifted off, soaring into the sky just as the blast hit the ground below. As they left the alien planet behind, the team felt a mix of relief and sorrow. They had rescued the children, but the cost had been high. Byte's sacrifice, and the bravery of the children, had given them a chance to escape. But the fight wasn't over yet. The aliens would come after them, and the team knew they had to be ready. For now, though, they focused on the children, their small faces filled with hope and gratitude. They had faced the impossible and survived. And they weren't done yet. The ship soared through space, leaving the alien planet far behind. The team sat in silence, their minds still reeling from the events of the past few hours. The children, exhausted but safe, slept in the back of the ship, their small bodies curled up together. The adults, however, couldn't rest. There was too much to process, too much to plan. John sat at the controls, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. His heart was heavy with the loss of Byte, but he knew they couldn't afford to dwell on it. They had a mission to complete, and the children were counting on them. Dr. Carter broke the silence, her voice soft but filled with determination. "We need to figure out our next move," she said. "The aliens won't stop chasing us. And if they find Earth..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. The team knew what was at stake. If the aliens reached Earth, humanity would be defenseless. They had to find a way to fight back. Ace leaned back in his seat, his arms crossed. "We took out a few of their ships back there," he said. "But they've got a whole fleet. We can't take them on alone." John nodded, his mind racing. "We need an advantage," he said. "Something they don't expect." Dr. Carter's eyes lit up as she remembered something. "The children," she said. Back on the planet, when they focused on their happy memories, it disrupted the aliens' technology. There's something about human emotions that affects them. John turned to her, intrigued. What are you saying? I'm saying that our emotions, our hope, our love, our courage, are our greatest weapon, Dr. Carter explained. The aliens' technology is powered by fear, but it's vulnerable to positive emotions. If we can harness that, we might have a chance. The team fell silent as they processed her words. It was a bold idea, but it made sense. The aliens had underestimated humanity from the start, dismissing them as weak and primitive. But humanity's strength lay in its resilience, its ability to hope and fight even in the face of overwhelming odds. So, how do we use that? Ace asked. We can't exactly walk up to their fleet and start singing happy songs. Dr. Carter smiled faintly. We need to amplify it, she said. If we can create a device that emits a signal based on human emotions, we might be able to disrupt their entire fleet. John's eyes narrowed as he considered the idea. Can you build something like that? He asked. Dr. Carter nodded. I'll need some time, and some help, she said. But yes, I think I can. The team got to work, their exhaustion forgotten as they focused on the task at hand. Dr. Carter and Ace worked on the device, using parts from the ship and the alien technology they had recovered. John kept watch, his eyes scanning the stars for any sign of pursuit. As they worked, the children began to wake up. They were confused and frightened, but the team did their best to comfort them. One of the children, the boy who had asked John if they were going to die, approached him cautiously. Are we safe now? The boy asked, his voice small. John knelt down, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. We're safer, he said. But we're not done yet. We need to make sure the aliens can't hurt anyone else. And we need your help to do that. The boy's eyes widened. Our help? John nodded. You and the others are very special, he said. Your happiness, your courage, it's stronger than anything the aliens have. We need you to be brave, just a little longer. The boy nodded, his small face filled with determination. I can be brave, he said. John smiled, his heart swelling with pride. I know you can. As the hours passed, Dr. Carter and Ace made progress on the device. It was a small, unassuming thing, but it had the potential to change everything. The team gathered around as Dr. Carter explained how it worked. It's designed to amplify positive emotions, she said. When activated, it will send out a signal that disrupts the aliens' technology. But it needs a strong emotional source to work. John looked at the children, who were watching with wide eyes. They're the source, he said. Dr. Carter nodded. Yes. Their emotions are pure and unfiltered. If we can channel that, it should be enough. The team fell silent as they realized what this meant. The children would have to be at the heart of the final battle. It was a heavy burden to place on their small shoulders, but there was no other way. John knelt down in front of the children, his voice gentle but firm. We need your help, he said. We need you to think of the happiest, bravest moments of your lives. Can you do that? The children nodded, their faces filled with determination. They understood the stakes, and they were ready to fight. As the team prepared for the final battle, they felt a sense of hope they hadn't felt in a long time. The aliens had underestimated humanity, but they were about to learn just how strong humanity could be. The team's ship approached Earth, its engines humming softly as it descended through the atmosphere. The sight of their home planet filled the team with a mix of relief and dread. Relief, because they were finally back. Dread, because they knew the aliens were close behind. John sat at the controls, his eyes fixed on the horizon. We need to warn Earth, he said. If the aliens get here before we're ready, it's over. Dr. Carter nodded, her fingers flying over the communication console. I'm sending out a distress signal, she said. But it's going to take time for anyone to respond. Ace leaned forward, his eyes scanning the skies. We don't have time, he said. Look. The team turned to see a fleet of alien ships emerging from the clouds, their sleek, silver forms glinting in the sunlight. The ships moved with terrifying speed, their weapons glowing as they prepared to attack. John's jaw tightened. We need to buy time, he said. Ace, take the controls. Dr. Carter, get the device ready. We're going to have to do this the hard way. The team sprang into action. Ace took the controls, maneuvering the ship with skill and precision. Dr. Carter worked on the emotional amplifier, her hands steady despite the chaos around her. John stayed close to the children, his voice calm as he prepared them for what was to come. Remember, he said, think of the happiest, bravest moments of your lives. Focus on those feelings. They're stronger than anything the aliens have. The children nodded, their small faces filled with determination. They closed their eyes, their minds filled with memories of family, friends, and moments of joy. The air around them seemed to shimmer, a faint glow emanating from their small bodies. The alien ships closed in, their weapons firing bursts of energy that exploded around the team's ship. The ground shook with each blast, sending shockwaves through the air. Ace dodged and weaved, his hands steady on the controls. We can't keep this up forever, he shouted. We need to activate that thing now. Dr. Carter nodded, her eyes focused on the device. Almost there, she said. Just a few more seconds. The team held their breath as the aliens prepared for another attack. The lead ship loomed closer, its weapons glowing with a deadly light. John tightened his grip on his weapon, his heart pounding. Then, Dr. Carter shouted, now. She activated the emotional amplifier, and a wave of energy burst from the device. The air around the ship seemed to ripple, the energy spreading out in all directions. The alien ships hesitated, their weapons flickering as if struggling to maintain power. The children's glow grew brighter, their emotions fueling the device. The aliens' ships began to falter, their movements sluggish and uncoordinated. The team watched in awe as the fleet began to retreat, their once menacing forms now struggling to stay aloft. It's working! Dr. Carter shouted, her voice filled with excitement. Their technology can't handle the signal. But the aliens weren't done yet. The lead ship, larger and more powerful than the others, managed to stabilize itself. It turned its weapons on the team's ship, its glowing eyes filled with rage. We've got one more problem, Ace said, his voice tense. That big one's not going down without a fight. John nodded, his mind racing. They needed to take out the lead ship, or the battle wasn't over. He turned to Dr. Carter. Can we amplify the signal? He asked. Make it stronger? Dr. Carter hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but it's risky. If we overload the device, it could burn out. We'd only have one shot. John looked at the children, their small faces filled with hope and determination. He knew they were ready. Do it, he said. Dr. Carter adjusted the device, her hands trembling slightly. The glow around the children grew brighter, their emotions pouring into the amplifier. The air seemed to hum with energy, the signal growing stronger with each passing second. The lead ship fired, its weapons hitting the team's ship with a deafening blast. The ship shook violently, the controls sparking as the systems began to fail. We're losing power. Ace shouted, his hands gripping the controls. We need to do this now. Dr. Carter activated the overload, and the device emitted a final, powerful burst of energy. The signal hit the lead ship, its systems overloading in a spectacular explosion. The ship disintegrated, its remains falling to the ground in a shower of sparks. The remaining alien ships, their technology disrupted, began to retreat. The sky cleared, the once menacing fleet now a distant memory. The team watched in silence, their hearts pounding with relief. "We did it," John said, his voice filled with awe. "We actually did it." The children cheered, their small faces filled with joy. The team felt a surge of pride, knowing they had fought against impossible odds and won. But the battle wasn't just about defeating the aliens. It was about proving that humanity's strength lay in its emotions, its ability to hope and fight even in the face of overwhelming odds. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and they had paid the price. As the team's ship landed safely on Earth, they knew the fight was over. But they also knew they had changed the course of history. They had shown the universe that humanity was a force to be reckoned with.